Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are joined by President Carrie Olson and Vice President Jennifer Bacon to talk about the announcement of 3 finalists for superintendent. I'll give it to Carrie. Dr. Olson.
Thank you so much, Wynn. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Carrie Olson. I'm the president of the Denver Public Schools Board of Education, and I'm joined by Vice President Jennifer Bacon. And on behalf of the board, we want to thank you so much for being here today. As you know, over the last several months, the Denver board has been working together diligently to find a new district leader, one who understands the heart of what we do in Denver Public Schools and will drive our district forward in pursuit of equity as our core identity. Among the exceptional pool of candidates from across our nation, and three candidates rose to the top. Each is bold, each is a rising star in the field of education, and each would be an excellent leader for Denver Public Schools. With naming these finalists, we are that much closer to having a visionary leader who will move our district through and beyond COVID, make student and community-centered decisions.
Much money. So based on median income, it takes a typical white
and move equity from an abstract idea and ensure that all who serve our students are supported to receive the best public education possible.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. Again, I'm Jennifer Bacon, Vice President of the DPS School Board, and so excited to be here today. So together, we will make Denver Public Schools a world-class public education system. As a board, we'll work together to do everything possible to help Denver Public Schools' next superintendent succeed, and we hope that you will too. We're extremely excited to introduce these passionate leaders and rising stars to our community, and for our students, educators, and community to have the chance to talk with them, get to know them, and help us select our next superintendent. So we ask everyone in Denver to come together around our collective values in building a strong public education system for all students and in supporting the next superintendent of Denver Public Schools.
We're also joined today by Monica Santana Rosen from the Alma Advisory Group.
And hi, everybody. Sorry. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here again today, and we're happy to take any questions that you have.
So we'll open it up now for any questions that you might have. Y acuérdense que podemos tomar preguntas también en español.
Teeny with the post, go ahead.
Sure, thank you guys. I'm curious how many people applied and how many people you interviewed for this job?
I can answer that. We received 38 applications. The Alma team interviewed 20 and the board interviewed 15, narrowing that pool down to 3.
Melanie,
this is Addie with, Addie with Denver 7. So not too long ago, students and at least 11 organizations from the Latin community reached out to the board demanding representation of Hispanics in leadership roles like the superintendent roles. I noticed that 2 of the finalists are Hispanic. One's Nicaraguan, and I can't remember what the other one, but it's Latinx as well. Did this play a role? And tell us if this was something that was considered during the interview process.
That was definitely something that we heard from our constituents, and having been a teacher in the classroom, I know how important that is for our community to have representation in leaders that look like them. We interviewed all of our candidates and evaluated their interviewing based on the qualities that we put out in the job search. So while that wasn't necessarily something we said we had to have, it was definitely in the back of our minds as we thought about what our community has asked for. And I don't know if either Monica or Jen would like to elaborate on that.
Thank you. I think what we took from the insights is really how do we talk about lived experiences and what kind of role it plays in leadership. And we also wanted to introduce our candidates to our community being dynamic as well, and understanding who a key demographic was.
And I just wanted to do a follow-up question. One of the things that these organizations brought up in a letter they sent to the school board was that graduation rates for Hispanics or Latino Latinx communities were down back in 2010. They are slowly rising. Can you tell us where the Latinx students are when it comes to graduation rates? Are those numbers improving, or were they looking at, and how is the school and then leadership looking to help that?
So we're really looking forward to getting our graduation rates for this past year. We don't have those statistics yet for the 2021 school year, and we're looking forward to working with the next superintendent around issues such as graduation rates. Anything regarding school engagement and academic achievement are areas, of course, that's in the board's purview to oversee. So we're looking forward to a new visionary leader to take us out of COVID and into the next stage of public education in Denver, Colorado.
Is it possible to elaborate a little bit more on the Latino students and how these leaderships are supposed to be helping them as well, since they are the second largest population in Denver and a majority of the population when it comes to DPS schools?
So Monica, I'd love for you to maybe jump in after I take a stab at that. But one of the things that the board really was concerned about is making sure that whomever interviewed for this role understood all of the different pieces of Denver, thinking of Southwest Denver that Director Angela Cobian represents, and all of the Latinx students there, but also in the far Northeast and across our city. I think of Place Bridge in my district that has not only Latino students, but students from all over the world. So we had all of our finalists look at a set of data and performance tests so that we could help see how they would think through solving some of these trickier issues that have plagued Denver public schools for years. And either Monica, would you like to add anything to that? As I know this is almost proprietary process, but that was definitely something that the board was thinking about.
Absolutely. We spent about 2 months speaking with nearly 700 community members who told us what their hopes and aspirations were for their next superintendent. And as we designed the screening process, we wanted to make sure that whoever the leader was, that they shared the core values that have been so important to the board and to the community in Denver. So every part of our process interviewed for those skills and those values. So we believe all 3 of these finalists are ready to support every student in Denver public schools.
And I'd just like to add on what Vice President Bacon had mentioned earlier about the lived experience of our candidates and how they'll translate that into action with our students. And I think academic achievement doesn't just weigh on test scores and graduation rates, but also the whole child experience, the mental health resources and the social emotional support that we can provide, especially as we come out of COVID and begin the next year.
Melanie at Chalkbeat.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Melanie Asmar with Chalkbeat. That sort of a follow-up question to that. I'm wondering, if you could talk a little bit about what you heard from the community, from those 700 community members, and how these 3 candidates sort of fit the description of what the community said they wanted. Thank you.
I can take a little bit of that. Please feel free to chime in. So we heard from our communities something that's very relevant to right now, which is how are we going to move through this pandemic? And in doing so, we need someone who can either connect or understand our experiences across our diversities. We also heard from our community that it really matters that a superintendent is present, that a superintendent knows how to build relationships so that those voices can kind of grow up into our leadership approach. And so in our process, we did as much as we could to reach out to different sections of our community. We also built upon the data and the information we got back in 2018 as well to provide insights there, where our community also said, we are looking for someone who has a strong instructional vision and believes in academics, believes all kids can learn, and again, understands our lived experiences. And so I just want to reiterate what we heard from Monica and the ALMA advisory group, as well as Dr. Olson. Our process was extremely rooted in matching people with values alignment, and not only if they understood what these things meant, but what are examples of how we've seen leadership there. And I just want to reiterate, that's where we started. And so it was really important for us in this process, I think one that differentiated itself, to say, here are the five, five or six, values that we believe in. What is it that you know about it? Do you know it's culturally responsive education, something that's natural to you, right? Do you believe in parent voice? Do you believe in cooperative or collaborative culture? And those were our screens. And so again, really grateful to who we heard, not only in this process, who we've heard years ago, and also who we've continued to hear from over the course of time since we've been members of your board.
In addition to that, exactly what Vice President Bacon said, and what we've done with the community feedback is thinking about the nuances in, say, equity or culturally responsive education. We know that a lot of people can just talk about culturally responsive education, but not know what it is. But taking things from the community and hearing how it's played out in schools, and then being able to ask probing questions of our candidates. Likewise with the word equity, I know one of the things we heard from our community is it seems to be just a word on the wall. So as we talked with our candidates, we probed, what would that look like in action? What does equity really mean to you in day-to-day experiences? Monica, would you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I think Vice President Bacon and President Olson said it well. I would add just simply that, community members said there were a couple other ideas. One is community members don't just want to have input, they want to have a seat at the table. And so we were really seeking leaders that believed at their core in true community partnership. And we actually interviewed for past examples of how each of these leaders have worked collaboratively with their communities through difficult challenges. So that was really important. And the community members are asking for a unifying leader as we think about the future. So we really asked each of our candidates to share their thoughts on how they would be a unifying presence in the district. And we feel that all three of these candidates have really demonstrated the ability to do those things.
Staff with the Denver Gazette.
Hi, thanks. Obviously, COVID is sort of job one, getting through that. After that or beyond that, what do you see as the new superintendent's sort of first thing they need to tackle or address beyond COVID? Thanks.
Do you want me to? Okay, sorry. I think what's really important as we think about the time and tenure of a new superintendent, we're talking about the initial phase is 2 to 3 years. And I do want to stress the importance of the work of accelerating learning to make up for the disruption that we experienced. Is going to be a critical part. But part of what we've also named in that is saying we have created new transitional priorities where we've named that we want to support our students now in socio-emotional learning and mental health. We've also said that we want to begin to support our students not only in mastering reading and writing, but knowing who they are and their place in this world. And so I will say that it may sound like 2 bullet points, but it does mean for us a big cultural and organizational shift. And so we're excited about that work to move forward. We've also talked about where are there any opportunities to kind of really learn from this past pandemic to figure out how we can grow ourselves when it comes to our efficiencies and to make some tough decisions. So the other thing that we'll say that we have to think through together is how we build collaborative structures. How do we walk through a period of time of declining enrollment? So of the things that I've named, it may again sound like a few things, but they are big things that we can imagine will take a couple of years to really be able to do well and to do effectively.
What I'd add to that answer is I'm really looking forward to working with the new superintendent on creating the next Denver plan. Many of our viewing audience know that we had begun that work in January of 2020. I worked on that with our superintendent, Susana Cordova, and Reverend Lorvik, and we're looking forward to picking that up again. We had to let it go during the pandemic as we directed our superintendent to work on the crisis priorities and then the transition priorities that Director Bacon mentioned. But we're looking forward to creating the next vision for Denver Public Schools with our new superintendent.
Jenny with CPR.
Yes, thank you. I had a couple of questions. The first one is a quick one. I'm wondering if any of the candidates are bilingual, with Spanish being their second language. And then the second question is, Denver's a pretty diverse district in terms of models of school, with the portfolio model, innovation, district run, charter, experiential. I'm wondering if this has come up in the preliminary interviews, and are you looking for how the candidates feel about this?
I can start on the bilingual question. We have one candidate that's fully bilingual. We have another candidate who understands Spanish, grew up with a Nicaraguan father, but is less confident with her Spanish. So she's working to develop her Spanish speaking, but definitely has an understanding there. So that's my answer on the bilingual question. President Olson, do you want to answer the other question?
Sure, I can start, and I know Vice President Bacon can also add some thoughts, because this was definitely on the front of our minds as we think of all the different types of governance school models we have in our schools across our district. Also thinking about the presentation last night we had on small schools with declining enrollment. So all of these were questions that were top of mind for board members as we interviewed the superintendent candidates and finalists. So that's been a theme that we've been thinking about ever since we began, because that's also a theme we heard from our community, from across all the groups that we interviewed for the superintendent role. The over, I think, 600 people we talked to, and all the people who filled out the survey, many of them talked about the different school models we have and how will we think about that going forward to create like a one Denver Public Schools. Do you want to add anything else, Vice President Bacon?
Sure, I'd like to just share that what we really did was ground the conversation in our families. And so we were able to share experiences of parents who have students in different models of schools, but we focused the question on how do we support our community and our families in navigating our educational system, which then took us to spaces of how do we strengthen all of the schools in our neighborhoods to mitigate any sort of impacts that our families may feel as they have to make decisions. I will say that we said this is an opportunity. We've learned things through the pandemic. We've learned the strength of cooperation amongst our schools, regardless of governance type, but we've also learned that we do need to focus intently on being able to provide a great opportunity, even if it is in a family's backyard. And so we did that to also kind of focus what the work will be in our region, in our district over the next couple of years as well.
Audie, Denver 7.
Yeah, so I just had a follow-up question. Obviously, we've been hearing that a lot of students have fallen behind with their reading. When you look at the Hispanic families, some of them don't have parents that speak English, so they may have fallen a little bit further behind than your average student. Were any of these candidates asked about what kind of programs can be put in place to help these Latinx community members and students really catch up with their reading when they don't have that support system at home and when they've been learning from home for so long?
Definitely, these are things that were on top of our mind, and we in Denver Public Schools, those of you who have been following our board meetings know we like to talk about accelerating the learning instead of thinking about everything that's been lost, because we know that our teachers and our families and our students have worked really hard during the pandemic to stay on top of learning. And yes, we did mention all of the different types of experiences that students have throughout Denver Public Schools. That's another place, like the example I gave at the beginning. We took some of the larger themes like what you're mentioning and then narrowed it down to some of the community members' feedbacks and questions and scenarios that they've given us to flesh that out with our next superintendent candidate and finalists.
Would you be able to elaborate on kind of the responses you received when asking these questions about programs and increasing reading for the Latinx students?
At this time, no, I'd just like to keep it general for at this point. I'd really invite the community to be involved and watch the finalists as they are interviewed by our students. I'd also like to mention that we raise student voices through all of this. The students brought up some of these questions that you're asking, and they will be asking these of our superintendent finalists when they do their interview, which will be broadcast live. We'd love for all of you to watch and give us your feedback. We'd love for the superintendent finalists to speak for themselves. And so I invite you to follow along and hear what they have to say about their ideas regarding accelerating learning, especially with our multilingual learners in Denver Public Schools.
Thank you so much.
Can I just briefly add, we just also want to encourage everyone to participate so that we can have these voices raised and so that you can interact with our finalists to hear the responses. All of our candidates, we've been able to make them aware of who we are as best as we can through our data, through prioritizing some of these conversations and groups. And now we're looking forward to engaging with our community to help put some of those questions on the table. So we have no greater selling point than our community. And so if we can have any opportunity to say more than right now, we would do it, but please be involved. We really look forward to your questions, but also so do our candidates. Our candidates are looking forward to learning more about our community and sharing what it is that they can do to best support us as well.
Yes, and along those lines, really want to ask for your help, encouraging everyone as much as possible to submit their interview questions for the candidates. We are accepting ideas for interview questions for the candidates. We have 7 different stakeholder groups that are going to be sitting down with our candidates next week, and they are reviewing the questions, submitting and selecting on behalf of their peers which questions to ask. So we really hope that the community will go to superintendent.dpsk12.org, submit your ideas for interview questions. We will absolutely consider them for those finalist interviews.
Jesus with Univision.
Hello, just following the last question in Spanish, if someone can answer me. ¿Cuál sería el enfoque del próximo superintendente del Distrito Escolar de Denver para apoyar a la comunidad hispana?
Claro, eso es una pregunta que habíamos preguntado a todos los finalistas, bueno, todos los candidatos para el superintendente de las escuelas públicas de Denver, porque habíamos escuchado de la comunidad que eso es frente de la mente de muchas personas, no tan solo los alumnos, pero sus padres y los maestros también. Pero como hablamos aquí en las escuelas públicas de Denver, no es todo perdido, ¿no? Que los niños han sido aprendiendo durante esa etapa, durante el COVID. Pero claro que hemos preguntado a los finalistas y los candidatos cuáles serían sus ideas. Como habíamos dicho en inglés, planeamos como una serie de datos y entrevistas y archivos para que los finalistas analizaran para decirnos qué harían ustedes si fuera el superintendente de las escuelas públicas de Denver, qué harían para dar servicio a todos nuestros alumnos. Entonces, como dije en inglés, no quiero hablar con ellos para todos sus planes, pero como vamos a tener muchos paneles, 2 paneles que pueden ver el público con los finalistas, pueden verlo y luego llenar un cuestionario para darnos a la mesa directiva sus opiniones acerca de cómo han contestado todas las preguntas. ¿Y contesté su pregunta bien?
Sí, muy bien, gracias. ¿Cuándo tiene estimado que ya nombrarán al próximo superintendente?
Esperamos que sea para los principios de junio.
Melanie at Chalkbeat.
Yeah, just a really quick question. I'm wondering if the candidates will be here, like physically in Denver, for the like forums and stuff next week, or if it'll all be over Zoom.
Unfortunately, given the pandemic at this time, we had to do the finalist interviews virtually. So we're remaining virtual at this time, but we do hope the final selected superintendent will come in person as soon as they can.
Well, we thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it on behalf of the Board of Education. We invite all of you to meet our inspiring finalists and provide your information and give us feedback on the next leader for Denver Public Schools. We're really excited, and we hope that you'll take the time to watch the videos that are on the website and watch the interviews next week and give us your feedback. We're really excited about this different process that we're engaging in this time, where we're really involving the community. We hope that this demonstrates what we've been hearing, is that the community really wants to have a seat at the table. So we've designed this process with great ideas of Alma Advisory Group as a way to involve our community in helping to select the next superintendent. So thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate it.